All right, cool. All right, let's get this conference started. Welcome, everybody, to Building Cross-Platform Apps with Ionic 2. My name is Adam Bradley. I'm a lead developer on Ionic, and I'm more than thrilled to show you what we've been cooking up the last couple months. So Ionic in general. Ionic is for building mobile applications with web technologies. And we're focused first on building great mobile apps, which is different than most frameworks because it's kind of a desktop first and then kind of fit into mobile, whereas we're kind of making sure that it has great mobile app interactions first, and also to make sure that you can easily customize it. Because we don't want just a bunch of apps that look like Ionic. We want to make sure that you're building your apps for your brand. And also I have Angular for code structure, but I have an asterisk there because I really like to point out with the structure of Ionic 2 or Angular 2, it's really kind of vanilla JavaScript. It's really just JavaScript, which Angular knows how to enhance. So I say it's, we're using Angular, but actually you're using JavaScript to build Ionic 2. And real quick, here's some of our stats that we're absolutely thrilled about. In the last few years, or last 2 years, we've been able to get up to 20,000 stars on GitHub, which we're very proud of. Over 1 million apps built with Ionic. And also, we've built an amazing community, include everybody that's right here today. So it's absolutely proud of where we've been so far, or where we've gotten so far, but there's so much more that we're going to be working on yet. So Ionic 1. Show of hands, how many people have been using Ionic 1? Oh, wow, awesome. Awesome, that's great to see. So cool. So Ionic 1 is great. It's a hybrid SDK for building mobile applications, and it's kind of validated the hybrid approach of being able to make it very easy to build applications using the skills you already have. However, Ionic 1 was built at a different time, which actually didn't seem that long ago, but in the world of the web space, and especially the mobile space, there's been quite a few changes. So we were built during iOS 6, and iOS 6 had many different standards that are available, whereas today, and especially on Android 2.3 to 4.3, it kind of was kind of lagging on what things we could take advantage of. But with Ionic 2, there's been a lot of this new stuff that we can really start taking advantage of. And what I'm most proud of, or most thrilled to show, is kind of the improved browser engines. And how Android really has improved their ecosystem of how to render out Ionic apps has drastically improved. And so there's a lot of those things we've been able to take advantage of in Ionic 2. So this is it, Ionic 2. You heard Max today, this morning. We're releasing our alpha version today so that everyone can start checking it out and getting feedback for us and let us know how it's going. But I really want to stress that this is the same great framework that we had with Ionic 1. It's got the same goals. And we really want to make sure that we're not trying to just throw a bunch of new things at you. We really want to make sure that you're still able to easily create your app. And also, we couldn't have built Ionic 2 without the lessons learned, with 2 years of lessons learned maintaining Ionic 1 and realizing the issues that everyone was having with it and kind of improving those. And along with that, you heard the keynote this morning, there's just so many performance improvements we're just going to get from using Angular 2. And a ton of new features alongside with that. So here are a few of the goals that I want to go over, that we'll quickly go over today. So first off, simplicity. So with Ionic 1, I've been pretty proud with how simple we've been able to create it, but we wanted to go even further and make sure that Ionic 2 has even simpler syntax, meaning that in these examples here, if you want a button, you just write button. If you wanted to style it with kind of a danger color, then you just add danger. Now it's kind of different than what you're used to, where everyone is familiar with CSS classes. And we're not saying you can't do that at all. We're just saying that Ionic is staying away from the CSS classes so that you can easily enhance Ionic with your own styles. And actually, it's something that's not often known, is that element selectors are less specific than a CSS selector. So that means that the CSS that we're providing in Ionic is actually less specific than anything that you're going to be having. So it's going to make it even easier to customize your CSS. And also, we're using lots of attributes for kind of the same reasons. And again, cleaner JavaScript. So here is kind of the first real look at what we have for a simple Ionic page. On the left side here, we've kind of got how you would wire up the HTML. It's like this is the nav bar, that's the profile, and then this is the content that goes inside of it. And on the right-hand side is kind of the new territory of we're using a page decorator. You see at the top here. And it's kind of familiar to how Angular 2 is doing, or it's very familiar how Angular 2 is then doing their components. But we're able to tell Ionic that this is a page component. And because Ionic sees it as a page component and you navigate to it, you push it onto the navigation stack, it knows how to cleanly animate it in And again, this might look a little bit different to you, but really what you're seeing is vanilla JavaScript. This isn't really kind of an Angular thing, Ionic thing. This is still standardized JavaScript, which is going to be more and more widely available, or more and more that you're going to use on your day-to-day basis. And again, this is the next step. That was an example of a page that would come sliding in, which could have been a modal, it could have been a tab, it could have been, actually let me go back to this. Another thing they wanted to stress is that this is a very simple component. As far as what you're coding, it could be anything. It could be a modal, it could be a page, it could be a tab. It really doesn't know. It's how Ionic decides to present it, or how you decide to show up, push this onto the stack. And so again, this is kind of the root component. What we're saying is Ion nav, we want the root element, or the root component to get added to be the home component. And here we have an app decorator. So Ionic, we've added 2 different decorators to make things really easy to kind of wire up things for you. That all being said, these are kind of shortcuts. You can still wire up all this stuff without the app decorator and page decorator, but these things makes it a lot easier for you. So next, we briefly talked about platform continuity at our last conference. We talked about it just a little bit at the keynote here. But with Ionic 2, we really kind of went all in with making sure that we really split it up to make it very easy to customize, meaning that there's an iOS version and there's an Android version, which is really the material design version. So with Ionic 1, we kind of first started with iOS design. And from there, we're kind of like, okay, let's start doing this material design support too. And we kind of made some changes to it. But with Ionic 2, all those lessons learned, we were able to now completely split those 2 apart. So it made development of Ionic 2 a lot easier, and it's also going to make it a lot easier for you to enhance it from there on forward. And also, what's the most important thing is that it's one code base. So you write HTML and JavaScript once, and it's going to automatically enhance it to fit correctly on the platform your user is familiar with and what they're familiar with looking at. And also, this is more than just different CSS. So it's not just styling checkboxes different. It's actually different interactions too. So side menus, the interactions of the page views, how they go in and out, how tabs transition. It's all these different interactions which users are familiar with on their platform. So here's an example of kind of one code base and showing how the exact same HTML, exact same JavaScript is creating 2 completely different views. And you can see how the iOS transition happens here. And this one you have a material design transition. And again, we got tabs on the bottom right now because iOS keeps tabs when you transition, but tabs are hidden on the material design because they don't keep them shown after the second view. If we go back, it's then going to show it again because that's just how material design likes to show their views. And so we're sticking to that. But if you looked at the code that I showed you just previously, you didn't see any of that stuff that you have to wire up. You don't have to figure that out yourself. You just say, hey, this is a page. And then Ionic knows how to correctly add that to the platform. Also, I want to point out, if you take a look at the icons, so take a look at the globe icon here and what that looks like. Take a look at this globe icon. Completely different to you as a developer, but as a iOS user or an Android user, you're going to those are the icons that you have on material design and iOS. So we make sure to also make it easy for you to just transition between those 2 different ones. And actually, you don't have. Let me show you the next set of code here. So this is how you wire up an icon in Ionic 2. It's very, very simple. Icon, home. And Ionic is able to know which one you actually mean to use, or it's depending on the platform it's being ran from. And we actually have over 900 Ionicons that have been created that are MRT licensed, already wired up, ready to go in Ionic. And they're all now using SVGs. And to show a little bit more example of what I mean by what we can do with that, let's take a look here. So here's the Android versions. And now let's take a look at the iOS versions. So all of that is already handled within Ionicons. And again, let's take a look at the code. This is what you have to write. I want to use the home icon, or I want to use the middle one. All figured out for you. Again, stare at one of these icons and how much they drastically change just for the platform. Again, different to you, but familiar to the users that are using your app. The next thing is V1 navigation. So with V1 navigation, and I say V1 as an Ionic 1, we were kind of tightly coupled to the URL. And what I mean by that is that we were using UI Router, which has been great for us so far, But if you were building complex applications with Ionic, you probably quickly ran into some roadblocks of like, okay, I want to go to tab 2, and then I want to go one view in, but I don't want to have the back button still, or I want to slide up the modal, and within the modal I want to have tabs, and then have a side menu. You can quickly get a complex app, but you really weren't able to kind of build that with Ionic, and that was because we were using UI Router to really control our navigation. And it worked fine for average apps, but once you try going outside the box of really like, well, I want to have a really complicated navigation stack of what you would see in a normal iOS and Android app, it got pretty difficult. So we quickly realized that developers needed complete control of their applications. So with Ionic 2, we're using more of a push-pop navigation system. And this is something that's very familiar to iOS and Android developer. And it now allows you to completely control the navigation experience. So one great example is, let's say you're at the side menus. You open up the side menu and you go to a second page in the side menu. You don't want to have a back button anymore because you opened it from the side menu. You want to clear out the history and make sure that you're still at that root view. If that makes sense, because you're still at the root, even though you did technically transition to one page forward, you're still conceptually at the root page, but it was difficult to handle that within Ionic 1 because according to Ionic 1, you navigated to one page forward, but that's not conceptually what happened. You're still kind of at the root of that side menus. And in this example here, you see that I have the schedule open. And in the schedule, this is an example Ionic 2 app that we actually have open source and up on GitHub that anyone can start using, and we're going to continually improve. But this Ionic 2 app, I have a list of sessions. Go into one of them, and I'm at session details. I'm at session details to appcamp.io. So now let's go into speakers. All right, so we're at speakers, and again, let's like scan through what all the different speakers are. Let's take a look at one of my talks. Again, I'm at session detail, getting started with Ionic. You'll notice here that they're both session detail pages, but if you look down here, the schedule tab didn't automatically get selected, but the speakers did. And so that was actually a huge challenge. I know this seems kind of like, well, what's the big deal? But that was actually a huge challenge to try to replicate using the URL bar, because we were all of a sudden had this new route of like, oh, well, you're in a session page. That means you're supposed to be in this tab. So let's forget everything that we knew was going on in that tab. And now let's navigate over there. But here you can see how we're able to keep the two different tabs, two different session details completely open, even though they could have had completely different routes. It all is dependent on how the user got there, not how you have set up your routes. And that's the key distinction here. Because I, as the user of this app, decided to go from the speakers page to the session detail page on this app. And also, all this makes it sound like we're just ditching the URLs, and it's like, all right, no more URLs. And that's not the case either. What we've been able to do is kind of reverse it where the developer has of like, all right, URL, this guy just did all these different things. Let's make sure we kind of set the breadcrumbs. Whereas the opposite happened with version 1 of like, okay, there was a page change. Let's see what they wanted to do. Okay, they wanted to do this. Let's load that up. Worked fine for most cases, but once you got complex and try to build out more of a native style application, this is where the push-pop navigation system has really shined. And here's a few examples that we have of showing how, just this pseudocode, but we've got our nav controller here, and here we're pushing on the settings component, or the settings page. And here's an example of kind of going back, where you're at the nav controller, so whatever page you're at, you would then pop. So think of kind of an array, or a stack of pages. And so we want to pop and go back. And each of these have all the logic under the hood to make sure that it transitions great for the platform that it's on, and be able to switch out all the animations beautifully, make sure there's no flickers, and kind of taking care of all of it for you. And again, back to my example about the set route. Again, with the side menu, if you open up a side menu wanting to go to a second page within the side menu, you don't want to be having a back button at that point. You still want to clear out the history, forget that you went forward one page, and that's what set route allows you to do, which is kind of a huge pain point with Ionic 1 and side menus. And then next, and actually here's a great example of how we have, these are Ionic 1 apps that were great popular apps, and kind of shows how quickly you can customize Ionic to have your own look and feel. So again, these don't look like Ionic apps. These look like their apps that they built for their brand. And that's what we continue to do with Ionic 2. But one thing we're also doing is making sure that we have all the build tools for you already all set up and SaaS enabled by default. Excuse me. So we're also going to be, initially we were providing just the one kind of white background and the same 9 colors. Now we're going to be able to provide like a darker background, a bunch of different themes you can kind of start from, and make it easier to have your own app again. And if you remember with V1, we have 9 different colors, 9 different emotional colors with cool names like calm and royal and whatever, right? So what we realized we kind of did wrong with that is that we were telling you, you needed to use these names of these colors, and you needed to have 9 of them. Even if you're only going to use 3 of those colors, you still had 9. And even if you if you want to have your own kind of custom name, you couldn't do that either because you were forced to use our name the colors, which kind of made it a challenge for people wanting to customize their app. So with this, we're using SAS maps. So here in this example, there are 5 colors, which I decided to name as primary, secondary, danger, light, and dark. Those are the names I came up with. These are the colors that I chose. And I chose, you know what, I want 5 colors instead of 9, or I could have 1. And all of that would then quickly, all of that kind of slims down your CSS, or only uses what you need. And again, you can kind of create these colors to your brand, to your name. In addition to our V1 animations, V1 animations were kind of a mix of CSS and JavaScript, and both of them have their benefits. So CSS animations are great. They're great for hardware acceleration. However, they're kind of limited because if you look at the example here, I'm directly saying that the duration should be 300 milliseconds. That is hard-coded in a static file, which is difficult to change and difficult to interact with. So I have nothing against CSS animations. It's just that they're difficult to interact with. So with V2, we looked into what the Web Animations API is. The Web Animations API is actually a spec written by W3C, and it's already available within Chrome, all in Chrome right now, already available in modern Android browsers, where you can animate elements directly, directly within the DOM. And what's great about this means that you're using JavaScript now to control your animations, but you're using the same great engine that CSS animations were using for hardware accelerated to be able to say, I want to take this div and slide it over here. So now you're using that exact same browser engine to do the same work that CSS animations can do, but you're controlling it with JavaScript. And this isn't something that we just made up. This is something that's becoming a standard and is already available in Chrome and Android. So we're taking advantage of that. And that being said, how it's already available in Chrome and Android, so it's not in iOS, but their polyfill is great. Their polyfill is actually very high performant, and the examples I was showing you earlier is all using iOS polyfill, and that is absolutely great too. So that sold us. So we decided to do all of our animations using the Web Animations API and built a thin wraparound for it. So if you take a look at this example, is you got the swipe to go back feature. Now that was a feature that is available in Ionic, and as I wrote that, I'll tell you that was very, very, very difficult to create because you're controlling all these different CSS animations with JavaScript, and there's lots of different rendering performances, and it's very easy to make flickers from it. But in here, you're seeing, okay, cool, you're swiping it back and forth, but really study what's going on here. There's about 20 different elements that are getting about 30 different properties, CSS properties, that are all changing at the exact same time under my control. That is very, very difficult to do with the classic CSS and JavaScript patterns of animations. But with Ionic 2 now, you can quickly build up these animations using our thin wrapper and the polyfill that we provide with it. So we've been able to make huge advancements. And the biggest advancement has been on Android because it traditionally has lacked. But now Android has kind of like taken one over on iOS because now it comes with this native animation engine we can control. And also all of this, we quickly realized that everyone wants to configure everything, right? So we always provide great defaults, but with Ionic 1, people said, yeah, that's great, but I also want to do this. Like, okay, we don't really have a config for that. So pretty much everything in Ionic 2 has a configuration variable. That means being able to globally set a variable across, I want every single platform to be able to get this config. Or I want just the iOS to be able to have this config. Or I want just this component to have this config. It's really up to you. And again, almost everything has a configuration value. And I'm probably not going to go too in depth about what we have, how this is written. because this whole conference has great talks about TypeScript and ES6 and kind of the next generation of Angular 2. But just real quick, we're built using, under the hood, we're built using ES6 and TypeScript and many of the new features that it has. But again, I just want to stress that TypeScript is something that we're using to develop Ionic that we prefer to use. However, you don't have to necessarily use it. If you choose to use TypeScript, that's great. Awesome. We provided all the tools for you in our CLI to allow that to happen. If you don't want to use TypeScript, you want to use just vanilla ES5 or ES6, perfect. Ionic can still work with that too, because in our new NPM module, we're providing all these different versions for you. And also, our NG Cordova project that we had for Ionic 1 was a great project that really helped show what you could do with Ionic. But kind of what we realized is that we're saying, OK, here's a great framework, start using it. And then people are like, well, how do I access the camera? Like, oh, yeah, that's right, you have to access the camera. So go to NG Cordova and try to figure it out. And we kind of relate to the game of realizing we weren't getting everyone all the way there, getting everyone ready to go with the correct native plugins and showing them how to get native access to this camera and Bluetooth and GPS, all the above. So with Ionic 2, we're making sure that we've made it even easier. We've added it into our own Ionic 2 repo and made it easy for you then to import these different projects straight into the same project. It's going to be well documented and show you exactly how to do this. And I say that we've kind of included them all. I also should stress that because we're kind of based on modules, that just because we have it within our repo and because it's accessible to you, doesn't mean your entire app is going to have every single possible plugin and have every single possible component that's ever been created. That's kind of the beauty of how we've been able to build Ionic 2 and using Webpack and modules, is that it only pulls in what you need, which is a great new feature that we absolutely love. And then again, we're updating our CLI to all work with this, because kind of how Igor is pointing out at the keynote, all of this stuff is kind of new, and it's all kind of a challenge to understand what is transpiling. All right, ES6 is really cool, I want to start writing it, but my browser doesn't understand what I just wrote. So that means it needs to be transpiled into an understandable ES5 code. And that can be done, and we're doing that in the CLI, but it's kind of a challenge to set up at this point in time, because the tooling is just kind of getting around and getting up to speed. So we wanted to make sure that we make it very easy for you. So with the Ionic CLI, it has these features now to get everything up to speed, and it's going to be a never-ending mission of ours to make sure it's very easy for everyone to get up and running. And again, I'm still thrilled by the huge community. I mean, even this room is packed, standing room only. I love it. It's absolutely awesome. So we're more than thrilled to keep doing this with Ionic 2. We don't want to just throw you new code just for the heck of it. This is actually new code that's going to allow you to build faster apps quicker and easier to understand. I also like to stress that while it looked different than what you're familiar with Ionic 2, it's probably because, again, it's the standards. It's this new ES6 classes and standard that you're not familiar with. But you kind of forget what you know about Ionic 1 and just look at it with new eyes as a new developer, like, oh, that makes complete sense. This equals that into the template. So it has many, many less concepts. There's no more scope and controllers and services, providers. It's kind of, we've been able to cut out all of these different concepts to make it very clear and very straightforward. So again, Max pointed out at the keynote that this is all available now. So we'd love to get your feedback. We'd love to have you start checking it out. And let us know how it's going. It's still in alpha right now. But we'd love to get your feedback and test it out. Tell us where it's missing some things and what we can do to improve it. So what's next? Alpha's released today. More web worker support, because again, that's huge on mobile. We're going to be staying in sync with Angular 2, because we've been fortunate to work directly with the Angular team. So each one of our releases is right up within 6 hours of the Angular 2 release. So right now, Angular 2 is up to alpha 44, and so is an Ionic. And we'll continue to do so. And even there's going to become a point where Ionic 2 or Angular 2 is doing its release candidates. During that point, I would even say Ionic is ready to go. And Ionic is ready to go now. We have people already building cool apps with it. So check it out. Let us know how it goes. But do know that it's alpha version. And there's even more to come with it. So thank you. I have my slides up online. Thanks for all the feedback. Continue to build Ionic apps. Let us know how it's going. Thank you.